God of mercy he is. It is really important that we know who he is. Something that stood out to me last week as Glenn was teaching us was really quite, it just jumped out at me. You know how when you've read a certain passage so many times, but then another time when you read it, God just makes part of it like it jumps off the page. I had that moment as Glenn was reading this out last week. Genesis 1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. We get down to verse 26. Have a look at that. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." I've read that so many times, but I can tell you 2 words jumped out at me so loudly. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Have you had that experience? I can't hear it audibly. I'm still looking for the day when I hear God's audible voice, because people have, so I'm up for that. But it's almost like that. It's just like, oh my goodness, it was the 2 words, so that. Let's have a look at that again. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." There's a reason we're made in his image and his likeness. God didn't just do it because he wants lots of little images that are a bit like him to go around so he can go, "They're like me." No, we're made with a purpose. So many in our culture don't know that we are made, created on purpose, for a purpose. I love that book by Rick Warren, The Purpose-Driven Life. Who's read that book? Oh, so many haven't. Oh, that is a good book. If you want that book, there are 3 copies you can borrow in the little lot of bookshelf out there. Write your name on the book. On the book, not on that book, but on the little sign-in book. And I really recommend having a look at that book. It is a Christian classic by a pastor called Rick Warren. It is amazing, The Purpose-Driven Life. You are made with a purpose, and you were made on purpose. Doesn't matter if you were a surprise to your parents, whether you're wanted by them, not wanted by them, you are wanted by the creator of the universe. He knew you when he formed you in your mother's womb, and he made you with a purpose. Like with Jeremiah, he says, "Before you were born, I set you apart." And his job was to be a prophet to the nations. We have each been set apart with a purpose, whether we know it or not. And that's part of the excitement of this life, this Christian life, is to journey with God, to know him more, to be more fully known by him, and to also know what is our purpose. There might be, obviously, there's more than one. There's probably a plethora, but most of us there's a purpose. And when you find your purpose, what you are alive for, you're here for more than just sucking in air. I know that might sound ridiculous, but how many are just surviving and getting through the day? God has made us, each of us, for much, 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 much more. I felt like God was saying, you cannot say enough muches about how much more we have been created for. When you find your purpose, there is something that comes alive in you. Do you agree? For those of you who have, and that purpose can change over time, there is something that ignites you and sets you on fire because you feel his pleasure. Do you remember Eric Liddell in Chariots of Fire? You guys know that movie? It's an old movie, but I love it. But it's based on a true story about Eric Liddell, and he was this amazing runner. And he was running in the Olympics, and he was English. And I think one of the heats was on Sunday, and he did not want to run on a Sunday. That was really important to him. And so he actually was totally out of that category because he honoured God, and it was this big, big thing. He ended up becoming a missionary and doing amazing things, and just amazing man, amazing life. But he said, when I run, I feel God's pleasure. It was the right thing for him in that season to run. God made him to run fast. And he honoured God publicly on the public stage with his gift. And that was for a season. And then his other season was the other thing that was on his heart, and that was to be a missionary. When you are fulfilling your purpose, you feel God's pleasure. You have joy, and even in the times when it is hard, because just because you're fulfilling your purpose doesn't mean it's easy. But you know it's worth it. And you can lay down your life because you know God has made me for this. When I do this, I feel his pleasure. When I do this, I honor him. And my life is all about honoring the one who rescued me and gave me life. God is. So we're made with a purpose. The purpose is to be a good steward. We are to steward this place that we call home, this world that we call home. Be good stewards of the creation. Be good stewards of our money, our relationships, our time. We are made in his likeness so that we can bring him glory as we steward this creation and everything he's given us for his glory and his purposes. Going back to those things that Glenn has already talked about, Glenn's going to do some more focusing on the true nature of God and some more about who God is. This is just a little mixture of who God is and who we are. I felt very strongly that's what God wanted me to talk about today. We know I've said how Glenn's already talked about God is love, God is creative, and God is three in one, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So we're made in his image. So God is love. We are made to be loved, and we are made to love. Yes? We all know that deep down, whether we acknowledge that God exists or not, we just know we are made to be loved, and we are made to love. And I remember hearing Dr. Caroline Leaf talking once, and they're even finding in quantum physics or whatever it is, when they're looking at this fourth dimension and all these amazing things with science, they're actually able to see that everything is made and it works best when it's in love, but they're using a different word. But she's able to show how it's all about love instead of fear. Everything works better if it's all working with love at the center. We are made to love and to be loved. God is creative, like Glenn showed. We are creative. Whether we think we are or we're not, we are made to create and be creative. And at least in this life, we'll have to wait and see what we're like in the next life. But in a way, please hear me right, I'm no way saying that we are like God in our triuneness. But we have a glimpse. We're made in his image with a little glimpse of that in us. We are body, soul, and spirit. So we're a spirit. That part of us is going to live forever. We have a body and we have a soul, our emotions, our mind, our will. So in a way, we reflect who God is as well in that way. I don't know about you, but it's amazing to think that I'm made in the image of God and that I'm made with a purpose. I'm made on purpose for a purpose. And that purpose is good, and it's going to fulfill me, and it's going to glorify him, and it's going to bless others. So Psalm 119:68 says, God is good, and what he does is good. I love that verse. Oh, it makes me happy. You are good, and what you do is good. Teach me your decrees. Oh, he is good. What he does is good. Our God is a God of action. And because we're made in his image, we're made to be about our Father's business. Who remembers what Jesus said many, many times about what he did or what he said? Does anyone remember? Ooh, all right. I've got you stumped. Let's have a look at John chapter 5. And as soon as we read it, you'll know, I think most of you will probably know exactly what I'm talking about. John chapter 5, verses 16 to 21. So this is where Jesus healed someone at the pool of Bethesda. You know, that pool where they were sitting there trying to wait to be healed, thinking that when the waters were stirred, one person, whoever got in first, would be healed. This man had been there for such a long time and he could never get in the water. Jesus comes on purpose to heal this man. Says to him, "Do you want to be healed?" And he says, "Oh, no one's there to help me get in the water." Jesus said, "Do you want to be healed?" Jesus heals him, tells him to pick up his mat and go home and walk. Because he couldn't walk. This man could not walk. He couldn't get himself anywhere. But Jesus heals him, says, "Pick up your mat and walk." But Jesus did this on the Sabbath. The Jews had taken what God meant as a blessing for man and to honor God and turned it into this thing of so many rules that even to heal someone on the Sabbath, they were like, that is work. You cannot do it. Are they missing God's heart? They are missing God's heart. And that's where we pick up the story. So the leaders, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, whoever they were, I can't remember which ones, but two different Jewish types of leaders, that story in verse 16. So because Jesus was doing these things on the Sabbath, the Jewish leaders began to persecute him. In his defense, Jesus said to them, "My Father is always at his work to this very day, and I too am working." For this reason, they tried all the more to kill him. Not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. Jesus gave them this answer: "Very truly I tell you, the Son can do nothing by himself. He can do only what he sees his Father doing, because whatever the Father does, the Son also does. For the Father loves the Son and shows